This episode is brought to you by Nordvpn. Now, if I had a dime every time someone asks me if I've started my Christmas shopping yet, everyone would be getting Lamborghinis this year. However, the truth is, I really don't enjoy the pressure of it. And I reckon a lot of you feel the same way. Luckily, NordVPN has our backs. Nord can help you save money by avoiding price discrimination, as well as giving you access to foreign e-stores, apps, and online auctions, meaning you can find products that you usually can't see unless you're using a VPN like Nord's. This is great for me because I have a lot of people in my life who are pretty hard to buy for. So much more choice means greater chances of success. So it might not be a Lamborghini from Katty and me this year, but consider this exclusive NordVPN deal a gift to our loyal Trip US listeners.
Visit nordvpn.com/tripus. That's nordvpn.com/tripus. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee.
The link is in the episode description. Happy holidays.
Welcome to The Rest is Politics US with me, Katty K.
And I'm Anthony Scaramucci. Hi, Katty. What are we talking about this first half?
So we're going to talk this week and kind of look forward big picture to what happens to the Republicans in the future, how the party shapes itself now that Donald Trump has been reelected, what happens with some of the more moderate members having retired and ideologically. And then in the second half of the program, we're going to flip the switch and look at what the Democrats are planning and kind of the various proposals that are out there for fighting back. I've got a little bit of a list, and some other Democrats have kind of come up with proposals of their own. They've been quiet recently, but we're going to look at how the Democratic Party pulls itself out of this end-of-year gloom. Let's start with your party, Anthony, and do a little bit of Republican Party therapy. So how are you feeling about the future of the Republican Party? Is now that we have people like Mitt Romney, the centrist senator from Utah, retiring from the Senate, is there still a Republican Party that you would recognize? Or for the foreseeable future, is there just the Trump Party?
Before I answer that question, let me ask you a question, because I think you're perhaps more objective than me on this issue. Is this current thing going on in the Republican Party a cult of personality? Or is this thing a transformation of the Republican Party where now the DNA of the Republican Party is totally different than it was, let's say, 10 years ago? As the 9-year advent of Donald Trump led to a complete DNA transformation? Or is he a cult of personality? When he expires as a politician, there's a reversion.
So am I allowed to answer both?
Yeah, please.
Because I think in some ways, yes, there is something about Donald Trump's personality that has spread fear among members of the Republican Party in such a way that they are very anxious not to deviate from his wishes. And we've seen that play out over the last couple of weeks at the end of this year here in Washington. So there is something about Donald Trump that people love and also people hate, but that drives Republicans to the polls, mobilizes the base in a way that kind of terrorizes other Republicans. And he by force of personality has, and by his fame, and I think we should never forget that, and his kind of incredible instinct for political communication, has created something of a cult of personality. This is very much about love of Donald Trump. But there is also a way in which the ideology of the post-Second World War Republican Party seems to have fundamentally shifted. So you've got a party that is more isolationist, more protectionist, less keen on free markets, very interestingly, less keen on deficit reduction. Whatever members of Congress might say, Donald Trump is clearly not interested in cutting the welfare state because he's realized that Republican voters like their health care and they like their retirement benefits. So in some ways, economically and in terms of global policy, I don't see the Republican Party going back to what it has been for the last 30, 40 years. But I do think that if it is worth looking at a Republican Party beyond Donald Trump, Because as you and I have said, anyone in Washington knows once you are elected to a second term in office as a president, you're pretty much a lame duck from the moment you walk into the White House. And the jockeying for the future of the Republican Party and the Republican Party leadership will begin the moment that Donald Trump is sworn into office.
You know, I could be wrong, and obviously I may be a little bit too emotional about this and less objective than you, and that's why I asked the question. I actually think it's a cult of personality. I think when he leaves, the vacuum of that is going to be filled by more rational people. And I don't think the MAGA people can get away with what Donald Trump's doing. I think he is the one person that can pull this off. I don't see JD Vance tweeting the governor of the great state of Canada. I just don't see it. Now, maybe he'll be able to do that and he'll be able to pull it off in a way where people are going to ignore it and not condemn him. And maybe he'll be able to act with vicious cruelty towards people and he'll say outlandish things about other heads of state. But I don't see it because there's something about a 78-year-old orange visage that is absolutely shameless and notorious that can get away with that. And I don't think that these other people will be able to do that. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I think Marco Rubio's coming for the top spot. He's going to be the Secretary of State, which, as you know, is the arguably the most important cabinet position. DeSantis, I think, still has fire in him. He's going to want to come for the top spot. They're trying to keep him out of the cabinet because they don't want to empower him. Susie Wiles doesn't like him. JD Vance is afraid of him. And so they're trying to keep him out of the top spot. They've told Trump, you got to get Hegseth. Don't go to DeSantis. We got to get Pete Hegseth in that position. And so what I see for that party is a renewal of that party and a re-engineering of that party. And I do think there'll be some populism going forward. But the big thing about that party, it's always been influenced by this, Katty, is big business, big money has always flowed into that party. And so you have to tell me in 2028, what does big business want and what does big billionaires want? Because they're going to be influencing that party. And by the way, to Donald Trump's credit, I always want to be objective with him. He's less influenced by that. You know, yes, give me the money and I'll say nice things about you. I'll say a 90-day pause on TikTok and things like that. But he's beating to his own drum, doing his own things. I don't think JD Vance has the muscle of personality or Marco Rubio, or you tell me. Now, there's a question from our producers that I will answer. Are there any traditional Rockefeller Republicans left, which are these sort of centrists that are sort of socially moderate and somewhat fiscally conservative? There's a few, but they're waning. And I think they're too boring for this party now. I think these people have figured out that these elections are now marketing competitions. These elections are popularity and attention contests. And so I think that's where it's going.
I mean, Donald Trump's a bit like the kind of superhero that you're wearing on your T-shirt. Very attractive T-shirt, if I may say so.
Christmas
this morning.
tea.
There we have Christmas T-shirt.
I got to stick
Superman.
it's part of my brand.
I'm going to push back a little bit on two ideological things that I don't see going back. I don't see a return to the Republican Party of John McCain or a return to the Republican Party of Ronald Reagan, or even a return to the Republican Party of George W. Bush. And here's a couple of reasons why. I think the idea of fiscal conservatism seemed, barring some massive fiscal crisis in America, kind of Liz Truss style in the UK, fiscal conservatism seems to be out the window. And that has a big impact on all of those traditional country club Rockefeller Republicans, if you like to call them that, who were kind of focused on, even if they didn't do it, trying to balance the budget and reducing spending, or at least keeping America's budget under control. I don't see that coming back. I think Donald Trump tapped into something very fundamental when he realized that that was a discussion that was happening. This is not something that, this is not the party of Paul Ryan anymore, who wanted to focus on balancing budgets. Working class Americans Donald Trump kind of brilliantly intuited, and he realized this in 2016 when he ran as well. We're really not that concerned about balancing budgets. That's somebody else's problem. Let's kick the can down the road. They wanted to hang on to their government programs. This is very different. And I don't see that coming back unless there is some kind of fiscal crisis in America. The other thing I think that is ended, and this gets to kind of more the John McCain, Ronald Reagan view of America, is the sort of instinctive commitment to transatlanticism. I would say that Joe Biden is probably America's last real transatlanticist president. I mean, again, if there's a massive war that goes on and America decides it needs Europe, that could change. But as things stand at the moment, Barack Obama was not a transatlanticist. Kamala Harris was not a transatlanticist. Donald Trump is not a transatlanticist. So the Republican Party that came out of the Second World War, where America recognized that it had a leadership role in the world, I think that has gone. And then the knock-on implications of that for NATO, for American leadership, for for Canada and the 51st state, as Donald Trump likes to call him. I think that, and I think it was so interesting to me when I was speaking to a pollster recently who said that one of the most popular, and I think I mentioned this on a previous episode, one of the most popular policies that Donald Trump talked about was withdrawing America from NATO. Because I think there is a feeling of we've been in these forever wars in the Middle East for too long. We're exhausted. Why should we lead? The world can go hang itself. It doesn't help American workers. I think in those two very important ways that were such important planks of American leadership and of the American Republican movement, I don't see that coming back. I mean, do you really think this could be the party of John McCain, the late great senator from Arizona again?
I don't see that. The stuff that Donald Trump gets away with is because he is Donald Trump. I don't see J.D. Vance mimetically being the Donald Trump clone politician. Or,
he doesn't have the charisma or he doesn't have the apprentice background. He
doesn't have the brand. He doesn't have the name recognition. I'm gonna say something to you, and I want you to react to it. Okay, I think George W. Bush is the Undertaker of the former Republican Party. I think he killed the Republican Party, and he embalmed the Republican Party, and he incinerated the Republican Party. He cremated it.
With his helper, Dick Cheney.
Oh, yeah, with his helper, Dick Cheney. And let me just say three things, get you to react to it. Number one, he went to war without a tax increase, first time in history. We actually cut taxes in March. He said he was going to have a tax cut. The CBO was saying we're going to have a $5 trillion 10-year surplus, the trajectory that Bill Clinton put us on. Bush said, no, we're going to return it to the American people, tax cut. We then go to war as a result of 9/11. First time in our history, we don't have a tax increase going into the war. So we blow a hole in our deficit. We then let up, regulatorily wise, on the banks, and the banks blow up Katty K. And we have the global financial crisis, which engenders the populism. The people say, what the hell are you doing? You're giving $1 trillion to the banks. We're out here suffering. You get the Tea Party movement, Occupy Wall Street, the Bernie Sanders movement, the manifestation of MAGA. They all come from these decisions. And the last piece is the forever wars. This is something I agree with Pete Hegseth on. Hegseth fought in those wars. He came back from those wars and he said, hey, man, these wars were stupid. They were ideologically stupid, and they didn't help the United States in any way, shape, or form. In fact, it may have hurt our standing in the world to prosecute these wars. This Cheney idea and this Bush idea of neocons flexing on the world and showing the world who is mighty in the world didn't work. And all of this now has transmuted into the current Republican Party. You buy that, or do you think I'm totally off base?
No, I think that war in the Middle East, which many countries around the world, and particularly among America's allies, recognized at the time was a fool's venture. But that Dick Cheney really pushed and George W. Bush went along with, has had enormous implications, not just on America's standing around the world, and we're seeing that play out right now in the Middle East, but also on Americans' attitude to global leadership. Here's a question for you. Who might bring it back to the center, the Republican Party to the center in the future? And do you know who she's putting as a suggestion? Your very favorite Larry Hogan.
And I love Larry, but he just lost an election. You know,
But
Larry.
you didn't like it when somebody suggested, who would be the Anthony Scaramucci of the Republican Party today, and I suggested, you could be Larry Hogan. But
no, I mean, because he's talking into like the wall. I mean, no one's listening to Larry Hogan. I mean, he's a very lovely guy, and he could run something. But remember, you have to win something.
You have to win
before you run something. Okay. And I would put him in as the chief operating officer of America. Let's go. Larry Hogan knows what to do. And he's a very likable guy. But in this bold, brash political environment, he can't win.
It's it's like, this is not Chris Sununu's political environment. It's not Larry Hogan's political environment. It's potentially Chris Christie's political environment because he has that fighting spirit, but he is kind of in the wilderness at the moment as well. So here's a question for me, for you. Can the Republican Party get out of the personality cult of Donald Trump and kind of Trumpism, and restore itself to something of a kind of centrist governing party if it doesn't do something serious about income inequality? And I feel that's the biggest challenge in a way for the Republican Party at the moment. And I don't see much sign that the Trump administration is seriously planning to address that. I can see that, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy want to cut government spending, but I'm not seeing a big governing philosophy around how do we actually address this thing that has kind of led us as well along the path of populism. Without, what do? You massively explode the deficit in a redistributive program. That's a kind of Bernie Sanders style approach to it. And we can talk more about the Democrats in the second half, but I don't see a Republican who's having serious, thoughtful ideas about what America really needs to do to stop this drift towards ever greater income inequality.
I mean, it's spot on, Katty. I mean, you're right on the center of where we need to be. And I don't see the person, but if somebody called me and said to me, hey, what do we need? What I would say is, in my life experience and my observations, 6 presidential campaigns that I've worked on, people do no longer feel aspirational. There's a good 25% of the people, when asked, are you going to do better than your parents? They say no. And they say that we're despairing that we don't have the opportunity that our parents or grandparents felt they had in America. And what I fear is the cognitive biases of the people that are in policy now. So it's one thing to talk about populism. It's one thing to talk about these people. It's another thing to do something for these people. And the Democrats are not doing anything really of substance for these people. They could care less. They're focused on transgender bathrooms and pronoun designations. And we've got to be woke and aware of our racial tensions.
Well, I think they've had a wake-up call on that, but we can get to that in the second
hopefully.
half.
And the Republicans are like, yeah, we're gonna talk about this stuff, but we really do want a tax cut extension. We really do want more corporate tax cuts. We're going to talk about this stuff, but we sort of want big food to bully the FDA because it helps us get reelected, because the big food people send us money. And so I guess what I would say to the politician is, if you can engender the empathy for those people, if you can somehow say, hey, I'm with you. Trump says he is, but he never does anything for them. And that's just the honest fact. Okay.
It's why you were attracted to Donald Trump in the first place. And 100%. I've always respected your story about that, of realizing that he actually he saw American workers. I mean, the problem is he hasn't followed through, right?
Followed through, but he saw something.
He saw
as
something.
I told you, when I met with these people, I was like, oh my God.
But I think he saw it as an electoral tool rather than as a governing philosophy.
100%. And so when I was out there with him, I was like, oh my God, he's talking to my dad. My dad was born in 1935. These people were born in 1965, 1975. But it's the same sort of people. They want to be hardworking. They want to do the right thing for their families, but they're not finding the job location. And so to me, it would be the trinity of education, healthcare, and whatever else you could come up with that means equal opportunity. Does that mean job training? Does that mean here's what we're going to do for you to retool yourself in a world of AI? And by the way, I am a Republican. I am not for equal outcomes. I think equal outcomes actually destroy a society. They take incentives away from people. A very small group of people at the top that are close to the government do well. Everyone else does less well, frankly. But it's equal opportunity, not equal outcomes.
Yeah.
And that's where the Republicans need to go.
And American voters have kind of grasped it. I mean, they look at how much money America spends on healthcare and they look at the poor outcomes they get. And we've seen that kind of explode over the last couple of weeks with the events around the United Healthcare CEO. And they realize America spends a lot of money on education, and yet their education standards are falling behind. They see the problem. And maybe maybe J.D. Vance has actually got some kind of intellectual cohesion around this. I'm not sure he has the ability to enact it or the political savvy to get it done. And I think there is a kind of streak of J.D. Vance that certainly some working class people in Ohio that I've interviewed don't feel he's really on their side. They feel a little used by him.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Are you bored of getting your friends and family the same old Christmas gifts every year? Look no further, okay? Because we have the ultimate Christmas gift for you. And that is a subscription to the Rest is Politics US to become a founding member alongside of the two of us. You know who's a founding member, Katty K? That would be me. You know, I paid the money. I know you're probably surprised by that, but I decided, you know what? Let me see what these people are getting. I filled it out on my Apple Pay.
You were not Scrooge. You were...
No. You see that? I'm paying us to be us with our fellow founding members, and you can do the same thing, guys. I even bought one for my wife, by the way, and she does love being a founding member because she likes Katty K, okay? And she's sort of bored with me, but she enjoys listening to Katty K beat up on me. And you can too. You can get your friends to do that as well. Go out and get your friends the ultimate Christmas gift. Founding membership in the Rest is Politics US.
Well, this is my official apology to your poor wife. And I do hope that you bought Deirdre something else for Christmas as well as a subscription to the Rest is Politics US. But I'm sure she got something sparkly too. It is the perfect gift, however, for all of those political nerds in your life. It'll mean that they can listen to the show without ads, always nice. They get access to our exclusive bonus episodes every week and early access to all of the episodes of our mini-series. And we've got a new one coming up. So just in time for Christmas, you can buy them a founding members membership and they will get access to our new January the 6th series as well.
Or why not ask for it for yourself? I mean, if someone says to you, hey, Dad or Mom, what should I get you for Christmas? You should say a founding membership in the Rest is Politics US. Thank you guys so much. Go to the restispoliticsus.com and look for gifts.
We are now going to shift the spotlight onto the I think I'm going to call them the dismal Democrats, because they are feeling pretty dismal at the moment, both about the outcome of the last election and about their own future. I mean, it's remarkable in this city, which is kind of full of Democrats. Washington, D.C. votes like 90% Democrat. How much people are. Every holiday event I've been to over the last few weeks, the kind of the gloom in the room is palpable. And it's partly about what happened, but it's also about what is going to happen to the party. And so I think that's how we should frame this discussion.
Can I be a scold for a second? Do you mind?
Go on.
Okay, I don't like being one, but let me be a scold, okay? Number one, what the hell is wrong with you guys? You know, Joe Biden was sunsetting. He was sunsetting. Nobody goes to Joe Biden in 2023 and says, hey, man, you can't remember things. You got to come out of the race. Jill Biden, what are you doing? This is your husband. This is the most stressful, most important job in the world.
Yeah.
He's got to tell people he's not running for re-election so that we can have a fair primary and we can run off of his legacy. He's actually done a good job. He's got a good legislative agenda.
He actually got stuff done, which is pretty unusual in America.
Why are you Shakespeareanly holding on to this foolishly?
Very good questions.
That's number one. Number two, hey guys, you're telling us that Donald Trump is the threat to democracy? In 2016, you don't let Biden run against Hillary Clinton. In 2020, you do have a primary, thank God. But by 2024, you don't let Bobby Kennedy run against Joe Biden. You don't even have a New Hampshire primary. What are you guys doing? And then, of course, when Joe Biden is forced to drop out of the race because he's obviously in cognitive decline, you don't have a primary. Obama wants one. You don't have a primary. And you put Vice President Harris in an impossible situation. And by the way, hello, let me just knock on the thing. Can you hear me? I'm knocking on the TV here. Okay. Hey, guys, what the hell are you doing? Okay. And by the way, you almost won the damn thing. It wasn't really that far away.
It was
170,000 votes. What the hell are you guys doing?
What's the defensive crouch? I mean, this is what's I mean, maybe if the Democrats had got the final result the day after the election, they would be in less of a defensive crouch. But I think the narrative that came out of election night, and you were on air and I was on air, was that, wow, this was a hammering. And of course, Donald Trump ran with that narrative and Republicans ran with that narrative. Although I think at the end of this year, with the events on Capitol Hill and the chaos up there, they may be realizing that their massive mandate that they're claiming is not as massive as they thought it was. But it pushed Democrats back on their heels. And I think yes, the revision around Joe Biden, and you and I said this at the time, that if Joe Biden had got out earlier, his legacy and history would be different. And my understanding from people who have had conversations with the president, he is actually still the president. You may not believe that because you have not seen much of him recently, although he's off to see the Pope, I see, in January. Is that he kind of does realize that now. I mean, I think he is leaving office bitter and angry and upset, but a part of him realizes that this is a problem of his own making, and that if he had got out in 2023 or even in March of 2024, even if he had done a kind of 1968 and got out earlier, he would have given Kamala Harris that much more time to run the campaign. Interestingly, there is not a lot of criticism of Kamala Harris. I mean, there is criticism around the communication of the campaign. Why didn't they repudiate the attacks on them for transgender things quicker? Why didn't they laser focus on prices and inflation? And you and I said this repeatedly during the campaign, that there needed to be a stronger focus on economics. And as you pointed out, that's not her kind of bailiwick. She doesn't love that. But that actually for her, I'm not picking up as much anger amongst Democrats for her as I am for him.
So you're going to learn, and you know this already, but I'm saying it's going to be written about in one of these campaign books, that campaign was Joe Biden's campaign to the end. They inserted Kamala Harris, but it was his campaign people, his campaign team.
And that was a problem.
Yeah, many of those people were leaking on her 2 years ago, get her off the ticket. Now they're running with her. And you'll find out that they blocked her from doing certain things. They didn't trust her. So they blocked her from doing certain podcasts. They changed her schedule around. They took her off the Alfred E. Smith dinner. Can't do that dinner. Donald Trump hurt Hillary Clinton's feelings at that dinner in 2016. You could get your feelings hurt in 2024. Don't do the dinner. Joe Rogan, scram on Joe Rogan.
I think that's all the kind of communications tool. The problem was, and the problem for the Democratic Party is, they did not have a message to working class Americans that convincingly sounded like they were laser focused on fixing the problems that American workers are facing, the high cost of living. I mean, that's not whether she goes on a podcast or doesn't. You've got to fix that message. You've got to fix that policy, not just the message.
I like when I put you in the communications director role, Katty.
Well,
because
God knows why, because no one has ever paid me a cent in my whole life to run anything or do
I
any kind
it
of
because I failed at it, and I think you, with your British accent and so on and so forth, that you could be a great.
So it's just the accent.
No, it's the accent, it's the insight, it's the experience.
I was fishing.
It's the sobriety, it's the maturity, all the things that I don't have. So maturity, all this great stuff that you have. Okay, so let me
I don't have a Superman t-shirt on.
Let me just throw this at you. Okay, do you think that the Democrats know why they lost? And if they don't or they do, you please, as the comms director, articulate why they lost and articulate what they should do as a result of their losing?
I think they do understand that the focus on identity politics that the Democratic Party has become associated with, particularly over the last 10 to 20 years, has turned off a lot of middle-class, centrist American voters. I think they understand that intellectually. I don't think they have understood how to not alienate some of their Democratic base that is progressive and cares about those issues, whilst also not losing the votes of working class Hispanic men, for example, to put again, to use the kind of identity politics they need to focus on. And I think what there has been is a realization that actually what the Democrat, and this is more from sort of strategists and commentators on the Democratic side, and some Democratic politicians, but there is a realization that they need to no longer think about Black voters and brown voters and female voters and gay voters, but to think in terms of class. There are working class voters, or maybe just think in terms of voters, but particularly for the Democratic Party, if they're going to be reelected comfortably in the future, they need to have, policies that you can't win in America without working class voters if you're the Democratic Party. So I think there is an intellectual understanding of that. I just don't think they know how that necessarily translates into two very important things: who to nominate to run for office, whether at the top levels or at the local levels, and how to propagate the fight against Donald Trump over the next 2 and 4 years. And I'm breaking it up into 2 and 4 years because in 2 years there's the midterms. And so this is kind of this term of office is really in two parts. It's a play in two parts. And I think they haven't really figured out what that means in terms of fighting.
Why did they kick Bobby Kennedy Jr. out of the party?
They kicked Bobby Kennedy Jr. out of the party because they saw him as too extreme on vaccinations. I think it's pretty simple. He reached out to both the Trump campaign and the Harris campaign, and there is a purity test, which I think Democrats also have to reckon with. I mean, there's a purity test on the Republican side too, right? I mean, as Donald Trump is finding out on Capitol Hill, there are, purity tests in MAGA world as well. But the purity test in that instance was this guy has been, and look, there are elements of Bobby Kennedy and his opposition to, in the past, things like the measles vaccine, which has been, the theory that is associated with autism has been widely debunked. And there are some conspiracy theories that Bobby Kennedy has been involved in propagating online that I think Democrats felt didn't fit with their agenda. Was it a big loss to them? I don't know that one individual like Bobby Kennedy is a big loss to them, but
no, it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural
thing.
They are smug. They are, we're right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
They're punishing. Okay. I was told by 3 or 4 people, thank you so much for your help on the debate prep. We'd like to get you on the plane with the vice president. You can talk to her about the economy, things like that. It was okay for Cuban to do that. It was not okay for me. Mm-hmm. You had once worked for Donald Trump, a result of which you are iced out. Our hard left constituents that are working on this campaign, we want absolutely nothing to do with you.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, guys.
Well, yeah,
no
but
problem.
why turn away anybody? I mean, talk to everybody. I have a theory which is, they need to talk to everybody. And more importantly than talking to, as one congresswoman put it to me recently, Democratic congresswoman, our problem is that we talk at people and talk to people. We don't listen to them. So a whole lot more listening needs to take place about what voters actually want. And I think it's interesting that you have people like AOC, who within days of the election dropped the pronouns from her social media accounts. And she said, I hear that the voters are not, this is not what this turns off voters. It makes them feel, like you say, that there is a kind of, we know best. This may seem to you extreme, but believe us, we are on the side of right. And we are going to tell you what is right for society. And I think that turns off a lot of voters. And, Anthony Scaramucci, we don't believe you're right you don't fit the purity test.
No,
crazy.
I definitely don't.
So
I mean, in
But
more
you
ways
are
than one.
exactly the kind of person.
In more ways than one.
Yeah. So I think that I do think some people in the Democratic Party and the strategists realize that. Whether it will translate into who they nominate for office in the future, I don't see them nominating somebody who is going to go hard on identity politics. And actually, if you look at people like Bernie Sanders, he is not a woke candidate. He is not interested in, if anything, Bernie Sanders always had a problem with voters of color. I mean, he just didn't get them at his rallies. So he is much more culturally, in some ways, in tune where many working class Americans are. So how do you think, because I have some thoughts on this, how do you think Democrats now, in the shorter term, Anthony, beyond kind of who they nominate, how do you think they should take on Donald Trump? Because we both said they're in a kind of defensive crouch and they need to find ways to get out of that. But how would you suggest they do it?
I maintain that Donald Trump has captured their narrative, their historical narrative, but he's done nothing for the people that are supporting him. And I would maintain that they need to get a charismatic leader out there who is going to go meet with those people. And Jolton Joe Biden, believe it or not, was one of those people. Mm-hmm. A 60-year-old Joe Biden, those people related to. He grew up in Scranton. He's worked as a blue-collar, progressive, liberal Democrat his whole life. You know what I mean? But they don't have that. So you got to find somebody. It's not, it's not George Bush's party anymore, Katty K, but it's not Barack Obama's party anymore either.
That's so true. A kind of intellectual Barack Obama wouldn't cut it at the moment.
Not at the moment. Go back to the hard scrabble.
We're going back to John Fetterman.
You got to
my favorite senator from Pennsylvania.
Dig in there. Well, he's thinking about running. And but it's something like that. Okay, and it's something like, hey, we have done you dirty, but we're returning back to the game. And our playbook is better than their playbook because it's actionable. And oh, by the way, here are a couple of things that Biden did for you. And nobody explained that to you in 2024, which is why you didn't vote for him. But this CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the reshoring of manufacturing.
Cutting the price of medications. That was huge.
All this stuff has helped you. All this stuff is reducing costs for you. You know what? We sucked. Excuse me for saying that word, but we sucked at messaging to you what we did. And by the way, we didn't do enough. I'm not saying we did enough, but we did way more than the other team.
Right.
And so here's our messaging. Here's what we need to do. Here's the person that we're going to put up. And when you name the people that are on the list, maybe because I'm a Republican, I look at those people and I'm like, yeah, that's not happening. Okay, Josh Shapiro, lovely guy. I don't see him taking the national stage. Gretchen Whitmer, very lovely person. Sorry, she's going to take the national stage.
I agree.
Okay.
It's got to be a different, to the extent that these are kind of, we're talking about this, and I think some people, particularly in parliamentary democracies, may say, why are you so focused on this like it's a kind of casting session from central casting? But it kind of is.
But one other thing, pass the vomit bag and go see Elon Musk. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, you guys are so righteous and you're so condemning and you're so punishing of people. You want to cancel everybody that doesn't have your point of view. But you know what? He's got 1 billion users. And you and I both know, as we've discussed on this podcast, it's the most powerful piece of news media right now. The most powerful piece of news media and medium, I should say. And go see him. Because let me tell you something. He's been inclined his whole life to be with you. So you lost Bobby Kennedy and you lost Elon Musk. You did lose Tulsi Gabbard as well, but she's frankly less significant than those two other guys. Go back and see Elon Musk. Say, hey, man, how are you? I know you're in the tank for Trump, but I also think you're not that ideological.
Let's talk.
And here are some things that I'm thinking about, and world's going to turn. And don't be one party, be bi-party, be bipartisan. That's what I would do.
I think the world turning is important. I have, beyond the big picture stuff, conversations I've had before this show with a couple of smart Democrats who have come up with kind of tactic ideas that I do think are important. I think one of those is don't get dragged into every Trump fight. It's too easy to the moment if Trump starts deporting people who are in the country illegally, who have committed violent crimes, don't suddenly become, caught in that fight of defending those people. Because you will never end in that way. Trump can drag the Democrats down to where he wants to have the fight with them and make them look very quickly like they are the party of lax law enforcement, looser border controls. And that's not where the American public is at the moment. So read the room, read the electorate, and don't let Trump dictate the terms of every battle. Just hold your fire. You don't have to fight every single thing. You also don't have to capitulate with everything. I mean, Democrats very successfully in the first 2 years of the first Trump administration, they were not in the majority in Congress, but they used their position in Congress to make sure that Obamacare was not repealed, which is something that Donald Trump had campaigned a lot on. He said, we're going to get rid of Obamacare. He also said they were going to replace it, but they didn't really have plans for replacing it, to your point about providing things that people actually need. But Democrats managed to stop them from doing that. So use Congress, use the courts. I mean, there are a lot of judicial things that can be done. Tariffs can end up in courts, mass deportations if he goes for family separations, if he starts trying to round up asylum seekers in the country and break up families, the courts will be used. The kind of network of groups will be used to oppose that, and that can turn public opinion. We saw that happen learn the lessons of the first Trump administration, but do it in a way that doesn't make it sound gleeful every time the Republicans screw up on Capitol Hill, as they have done over the last at the end of this year. Don't be celebrating that, because actually a government that shuts down does not help American workers. It hurts American workers. And want the country to succeed, want the administration to succeed, but also find areas where you can have successfully take them on. And I think Elizabeth Warren has been talking about this from a much more progressive standpoint, I imagine, than you would think. But there are Democrats out there who see the tools. And I think once they get over the shock of losing the election, and maybe what's happened over the last couple of weeks in Congress, will motivate some of them to realize, actually, we have some wiggle room here. Beyond kind of thinking, what do we do as a party? That there are tactical things that they can do.
Very well said, but I don't see the person. Okay.
No,
Fetterman. I mean, I know you love this guy.
I don't
see it, but maybe, I don't know. I mean, I think
why do I point to him? Because he's different. He is somebody. I've interviewed his family in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. He has born and raised in the same suburb of Pittsburgh that he's raising his family in. He knows the steel workers in his town. He has a relationship with union workers. I don't love everything about John Fetterman, but I can see how I think his health issues make him non-viable anyway. But I think that Democrats need to be thinking, there's this woman in Washington State that everybody is talking about, Marie Gutsenkamp Perez. Could you just check that for me? This congresswoman in Washington State who ran an auto repair shop and has come to Washington, wears a plaid shirt and a baseball hat and tells people, like it is, and talks about what she knows, the workers in her community, and she knows what they want and what they don't want. So Democrats, you've mentioned Richie Torres from New York. I mean, there are kind of different, look for different types of leaders. And I think you're right to say the Andy Beshears of Kentucky, the Gretchen Whitmans of Michigan, those people that we've been talking about are not necessarily where the Democratic Party needs to be to take on Donald Trump. And look, the other thing is, realize, as you just said, things change. And this is the 2024 election. Don't fight the 2024 election in 2028. Take the useful lessons from 2024, and I think wokeism is one of those, the pushback against that of the American electorate, particularly more conservative groups of the American electorate. But realize that, just read the room, listen and read the room.
You ever listen to Pod Save America, one of our competitors?
So I actually have listened once or twice, but I don't listen regularly to that podcast. And I think it's a very, those are all from the Obama stable. They've clearly been incredibly successful at what they do, but it's not a podcast that I feel I don't know. It's just not a podcast I listen to every week. Do you?
Oh, well, I don't listen to it every week, but I listen to that podcast, and I listen to Steve Bannon's War Room.
I know. That's the one I think I need to start listening to.
Because I listen to both that he says. I want to hear what these people are saying.
Yeah,
and
they're from the kind of opposite ends of the
so
spectrum.
let's talk about Pod Save America is all about Obama nostalgia.
Yeah.
We did everything right.
That's why I think I don't listen to it, because it's like the past. It's not where the country is right now.
I listen to All In. These are other podcasts. Our producers are going to accuse me of podultery. You know what they say?
Yes, podultery. They don't like that. I listen to Hacks on Tap again.
Yeah, here they go. They're typing Katty K in the chat. They're typing total podultery. See, they're upset. But again, I have to listen because I have to see what our competitors are doing.
You've got a Republican and a Democrat.
Yeah,
I think
exactly. I got to see what our competitors are doing because I want to dare to be different, Katty K. I want to dare to do something that our competitors are not doing.
Way better than all of that.
Yeah, of course. But Pod Save America is Obama's right. We're right. Obama nostalgia. Okay, I think that's going to become very passé. Bannon is, let's
blow it up.
Yeah, let's rattle the sabers. Let's bring down total nihilism. Yeah. Let's bring everything down and wreck everything.
The one I did listen to, there was a lot of kind of retribution.
Mean, menacing, prosecute the prosecutors, all the stupidity that is the malevolence of Steve Bannon. But I don't see the Democrats with a coherent voice that's going to grab 53 to 55% of the population. I don't see it. Also, they
don't need to grab 53 to 55%.
I know, but I'm saying, you want to overshoot.
They need to get 50 to 51.
I know, but my grandmother said, shoot for 98, shoot for 99, you get a 92, you'll be happy. I'm overshooting for a reason. I don't see it. And I also don't see, and they got another big problem, and that problem is called the mainstream media. Because guess who the mainstream media is now, Katty? That's the conservatives. The conservatives run and own American media. Sinclair Broadcasting, they coordinate all their local network news and they control almost all of it. Newsmax, Fox News. If you took MSNBC's ratings and CNN's ratings, which we define as the mainstream media, these guys trounce them. They trounce them.
And the same is true in the podcast world.
Yeah,
where
and conservative talk radio.
And talk radio. I mean, I think if you take a voter who listens to Fox News and conservative talk radio, you know exactly where they're. An American.
Develop a voice. I would tell these guys, go back to your breadbasket, which are white working class people.
Well, and
develop
Hispanic
a voice that resonates.
People and black working class people.
Yeah, black. Yeah, of course.
I mean, I think just working class people.
Yes, you're right. Working class people of all stripes and flavors. But develop a voice so that when people tune in, they're hearing a voice. You see, what helped Trump was they're tuning into conservative voices, and then he's preaching this populism. And they're saying, okay, I've got references in my brain, and I've got confirmation that this is the right way to go. And by the way, guys, you lost by a very small margin. If you had your you-know-what together.
If they'd had a longer campaign, if they're, lots of different things.
Of course, if Biden dropped out and you had a primary process and.
It's possible we wouldn't be having these conversations. Yeah.
Primary victor won and had their own team running their campaign, you probably would have beat him. Yeah. But you aided him. So go back to the drawing board is what I would say to my friends on the side of the Democrats.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up there. To everybody who's listening, we hope you have a very happy new year and that you've had a good end of the year. And we wish you all peace and prosperity and family and good cheer for 2025.
You know what I wish for you people? I wish for you the weight discipline of Katty K. Okay, because this woman doesn't gain weight during the holidays. I'm up like 6-7 pounds during the holidays. I just want everybody to have Katty K's weight discipline going into 2025.
I was going with peace on earth and goodwill to all men.
I'm going with the more important.
Hey, pounds and kilos will do it too.
Yes, I think people know that you're deep and I'm shallow. And I just want people to have your weight discipline, Katty, as they enter 2025.
And do join us on Sunday for our founding members episode, our question and answer episode, just for our founding members, where we will also be taking your questions. And if you are not a founding member, please think of becoming one, your New Year's resolution. You can find us at therestispoliticsus.com. Happy New Year to you all.
Happy New Year, everybody. And thank you again for listening.